Hi, my name is Sola, and you're listening to Heartland, a fan podcast from a fan perspective. Hi, long time no see. It's actually been like 5 months since I talked to you, and it feels a little weird right now. And if you're actually watching this, you're seeing this is not the usual setup, and I even tried that. But the light in my apartment is weird, and it was very frustrating to set it up. So I just figured, why not do it with my phone instead? Because I feel like I just want this episode out. And in fact, I kind of want to talk about that today. This is not really about Heartland, this podcast episode. More like catch up or like a life update and sort of how I'm feeling right now and how I've been feeling these last 5 or so months. Yeah, let's get into it. So let's rewind back to December when I last posted a podcast episode. It was pretty hectic time for me. I was working like I usually do. I was doing the podcast every week. And then, some things happened in my personal life. There was a big health scare in my family, and it really sort of made me, I don't know, not burned out, but I was just exhausted on every level. I think I was just trying to go on like nothing was really happening to me, or just trying to keep that routine that I usually have. But at some point, I just realized I was really exhausted and I wasn't taking care of myself properly, and I was giving more to other people instead of kind of focusing on myself. So I made the decision that I would have a small hiatus after the episode that I previously posted. And at first I thought, maybe a couple of weeks to just kind of focus on what's going on and just rest a little and all that, and see kind of how I would feel after that. And I really started to noticing once, we got to January that I was feeling really anxious. Like physically, I could feel that there was like this strange combination of energy, but also that anxious exhaustion. And I didn't really know what to do with that. So I figured I'd start like doing things that I would find calming and hoping that that would kind of help me rewire my nervous system and help me get back to my normal, if there's that. I actually started going swimming every week for 2 hours or so, because I find that very calming. And when you're swimming, you're really just focusing on that, but at the same time, your thoughts just kind of come to you and you are not in a hurry to kind of deal with them because you don't really have those distractions you usually do if you're not swimming, if that makes sense. And I found that very calming. I also just started cleaning my apartment. I had not really done that for a long time. Like, obviously, like small chores here and there, the upkeeping and stuff like that. But I could just feel that the physical space that I was in was affecting my emotional side as well. So I thought that was a good way to kind of deal with some of those feelings and just let my thoughts come and go, and sort of go over things that I should let go and things that I should keep. Sort of like when you're cleaning things, you have to really think like, do I keep this? Do I pass it on and all that kind of stuff? So I was doing all these sort of things on top of, going work and meeting people closest to me and sort of just taking time to really think what was important to me right now. And it's interesting because I did a video similar to this last year, almost to a date, and I was talking similar things, and it seems like I really didn't learn from that. So I'm hoping that this time, this is it. And I'm learning to listen to myself. Basically, I had already thought about this back in December, but I was like, should I even continue doing the podcast? Like, is it that important to me? Like, when I did the 100th episode special, the video vlog, it was partly because I wanted to make something special. I wanted to show you kind of how the podcast is done, but also there was this thought on my mind that I kind of wanted to show that even though this is kind of a simple concept, I want you to see, what's happening in my life and how it gets made and how time consuming it can sometimes be, especially when we had the weekly episodes and I did the recaps and I sort of, they had to be very up to date. They couldn't be about random topics that I could just kind of record in advance or anything like that. So I had to really keep up with the schedule in a way, on top of everything else that was going on with my life. So I was in a point where I started to feel like I was going to work. Then I came home to do more work. And I didn't really have time for a lot of other things. So I was thinking back in December, what is the plan with the podcast? I don't want to just end it like that, because I still have few thoughts that I wanted to do with this. But at the same time, I knew that it couldn't go on like this. So in my mind, I was like, okay, well, take a little break and see how you feel, because you have to kind of see the life outside of the podcast to see if you miss it or if you don't miss it. It has been a ride, because at first I thought I'll come back in January or something. I didn't really give you any date. I just said hopefully soon. And I probably shouldn't have said that, because then I set a promise that I felt like I needed to keep. And then in January, I was at this point okay, I need to start working again, working on the podcast, and then I felt that the anxious feeling had not gone away. So I was like, okay, let's take a step back and give yourself a little more time. And then January went by and I was like, okay, well, maybe February. And then suddenly February had gone by and I just kept going back and forth. I don't have time to do the podcast. And I don't feel like I want to do this episode you're actually watching right now. And then March, April, and I was like, okay, this is getting ridiculous. You have to do something. You can't just leave it at that. So that's where the thought of this episode came from, that I would start this second half of the third season, if you can call it that, like this. That I would sort of explain where I'm at and what I want to do or what I don't want to do. So yeah, this is filmed in May and I'm posting this in a few days. So this is very up to date in that way. Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what the plan is and what the process of making this podcast has been, because this is the third year I'm making this. So I already have a little more experience of what this is and how I want to do it or what I don't want to do and what's good and what's not. Even though things are still kind of messy, because it isn't really just about doing this. It is also noticing some patterns I have in my head that I'm repeating, not just with the podcast, but overall in life. And I think in a way this has been a useful tool to notice those patterns and sort of be like, is it really that serious as you're making it out to be? Because even though this isn't serious, in my mind, I'm like really committed to doing this. But should I? Like, I don't know. I'm still kind of processing all of this, but I just wanted to explain this. So maybe it will explain a little bit more why things are going the way they're going. Like, maybe no one cares. That's fine as well. Because again, it's not that serious. I know it, but at the same time, something in me doesn't know it, and I kind of need to figure out what that is. And also, maybe someone out there is feeling something similar to this and just needs a reminder to kind of take time for yourself and reassess the situation and notice if you're kind of stuck in a routine that doesn't give you what you're hoping it would give you. I don't know. I just felt like I wanted to kind of be open about this, whether anyone cares or not, but just I felt like it was time to talk about this right now. So, yeah. So let's rewind back a little bit. Izzy and I started this podcast back in 2021, and we were still very deep in the COVID times. And back then, if you don't remember that time, there was not a lot of things we could really do. So I was home a lot, I didn't see a lot of people, and that's how the idea of the podcast came to be, because Izzy and I were like, wouldn't it be fun to do this? And we have all this time, so why not just give it a try? And so we did, and it was really fun, and we kept going because we enjoyed it so much. And back then, we took turns editing the episodes and posting them and all that. And then after season 1, Izzy decided she wanted to step back, and I was fine with it, because you can't do something if you don't feel like your heart is in it anymore, for various reasons. Like, there was no trauma between us or anything like that, like we're still friends, but at the same time, you know, she was going through a lot, so she figured she needed to focus her energy where it really mattered. And it's interesting that I'm so accepting of that, because it makes total sense. But at the same time, I'm noticing I'm not doing the same thing with myself, which is strange. Like, why is everyone else worthy of that kind of support, but I'm not, when I'm the most important person of my own life? So, very interesting. But yeah, I wasn't really doing much back then, because I didn't have my own bubble here where I live. I was just doing work and then the podcast, so that was basically mostly my life back then. And then when Izzy stepped back, I still felt like I had a lot of ideas for the podcast, so I was like, I'm just gonna keep doing it, maybe a little differently, but I'm gonna give it a try, because, you know, you don't know if you don't give it a try. Yeah, I just kept going, and after the first year, I sort of realized that it's a very heavy thing to do alone. Even if the podcast is not the most perfect thing, I want it to feel real, and I want it to be my own creation. So it doesn't need to be perfect or the most high budget thing that I've ever done, because in a way that's also teaching me some things, because I sometimes do try to make things perfect. So it's a way to sort of practice with myself to not make things as perfect. And with that said, I was also creating this demand in my brain that it needs to be something still, like it can't just be half-assed. Yeah, I tried to make it good enough every week, but at the same time, you know, I had other life going on, like the social life was picking up after things were shifting with COVID and stuff like that, and I was starting to do the things that I normally would have done. And so I was really trying to balance like 3 different areas in my life. And looking back now, having done, well, almost 2 seasons of this podcast alone, I'm realizing, because it has filled my life since the early COVID days, that I don't think I really did a smooth return to the new normal, or this life I'm living right now, because I had this new thing with me, this new project, and I don't know that you can kind of go back to the before times where it didn't exist with that and not have it affect what you're doing. So I have realized that I haven't really given myself time to just sort of be. I haven't really given myself time to return to normal, so to speak, because I've had the podcast, and I know it sounds so dramatic, but I don't mean it to be so dramatic, but it is just a fact that is part of my life right now. And I think these past few months have really shown me that I need more time to have that life outside the podcast and my weekly work, just sort of to get to know myself again, because I was very isolated. Then I was slowly getting back to how things used to be, but I also had this new audience to sort of entertain. So it was really kind of a heavy duty for someone like me who doesn't really, in fact, I don't like to be on camera. So that itself is kind of weird. But at the same time, I'm not a really big like people person. But I think at that time, 2021, I needed a community, and that community only existed for me through internet, and now I have the community elsewhere. So it's kind of a lot for someone like me to be entertaining a lot of people like this, and I can see and I can feel how it's taking a toll on me, because I need that time to process things and be alone and enjoy just doing mundane things and not have them feel like chores. Like the swimming, like I said, like it's very calming to me, because that's just for me. Like I can only be there for me in those moments. Or the cleaning of the apartment, like I have music or podcasts playing in my ear, but then I'm doing something with my hands, and it's not something that I'm doing with a computer, because my work actually relates to computers. And then when I'm editing the podcast, it's about the computer. So I really need to take more time to be in the nature and do stuff with my hands that are not relating to computers. And I want to be the one who listens instead of the one who talks more. You know? That makes sense? So back in last year, I had this thought. Like, I remember it just coming to me like very clearly, like, okay, this can't go on like this. You need to have an end date of some sort to sort of have that thought of release, that this just doesn't keep going and going and it feels too much. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do like, I don't know, 5 more episodes and that's it, like for good. Kind of deciding that, I had this feeling of like long sigh, like, oh my gosh, like, yes, this has an ending of some sorts. But at the same time, I felt a little bit guilty because Heartland is still going on, and, having a Heartland podcast, you would think that the podcast would still continue with that. But I was like, okay, give yourself time. Just decide for now that it's like 5 episodes and then that's it. And I sort of held on to that because it gave me like permission to sort of breathe again. Then, like I said, like January came and went, and I still had that thought. But at the same time, there were parts of this podcast that I sort of started to miss. Like, I was like, maybe not just 5 episodes. Like, I don't know, like maybe it's not that bad. So I've been going kind of back and forth with that. Like, do I actually stop doing this podcast after a certain amount of episodes, or what's the plan? And I still kind of don't know that. I don't know what I will do. I know I have few episodes that I've done that are sort of in the vault. I know I'm doing few episodes in the upcoming weeks. If that's like the 5 episodes that I'm doing that I sort of planned, and then that's it, I don't know. At this point, I'm kind of like, no, I don't think so. But I actually don't know. Like I said, there are parts in this podcast that I do like doing, but the weekly routine is just too much for me. So I've been kind of toying with the idea, like maybe 2 times in 1 month or 1 in a month. Like, I don't know. But at the same time, I'm like, are you just creating more work for yourself in a way? Or maybe you should have the freedom to post a new episode whenever. So I'm still kind of toying with that decision. At this moment, I have a plan to post a few episodes at least. Maybe then I take another break, give myself time to work the next episodes. I don't know. But at the same time, at this point, that's sort of the goal I'm setting for myself, to give myself some type of direction and see how that makes me feel, or how I can kind of keep up with that plan. At the point you're seeing this episode, this is actually a few days before this gets posted. They still haven't announced season 18, but I'm like 99.9% sure that it's happening. And so there's a filming season ahead. There's a new season ahead later this year. And I did like doing the recapping episodes like I've done, or we've done with Izzy, but I do recognize they're a lot of work. And I've sort of decided that I won't be doing those, even though they're fun to do, but at the same time, like I said, I need to know my limits. I need to give myself more time to just be, because for a creative person, just being, maybe even being a little bit bored, is like, it feeds the soul. It gives you inspiration. Like, I've noticed now that I've not done the podcast, I've actually been writing more. I've actually picked up a book, which I haven't really done. So I miss having that kind of like processing of inspiration outside doing something. And I really want to do more of that. So I've decided that no matter what happens with the podcast, I'm not going to do the recapping of the episodes. Maybe I still do the posts when the episodes come up, but I'm not doing a whole episode about that. We'll see. But I just wanted to kind of put that out there. I also know that I don't want to make a third of these kind of episodes where I talk about mental health and how I'm feeling, and what's going on with my life, and what's going to happen with the podcast and all that. I'll keep you in the loop with that. But for now, there's some episodes coming, but it might not be like it has been with the schedule, posting the episodes and all that. But if you follow my Instagram page, H2HL Podcast, that's where you'll get the updates about the new episodes and all that, so you won't miss an episode if you're still interested in listening what I'm talking about, what we're talking about with you guys. Yeah, I just don't want this to get too big. I want this to be a personal project. Like, the things I've been able to do with this podcast, like the interviews with cast members and all that, like, they have been great, but I don't know that it was ever the direction that I wanted for this podcast, because this is from a fan to the fans. So I want to keep this personal and intimate and very fan focused. That's sort of where I'm at right now. I don't know if this was giving anything to you guys, but it was a good therapy session for me, at least. So yeah, you can send the check in the mail. I am gonna do season 18 predictions episode next week. I have actually made a post about that on Instagram, so if you haven't commented under that post, do that now, because I am filming that early next week, because they actually start filming next week. So I want to get, ahead of that, so we can't really know what is actually happening, because it's predictions after all. So yeah, I'm doing that next week. Meantime, I want to hear what you guys have been up to, how you're feeling, what you've been doing this last 5 months, what are your plans for the future, like what's going on with you. I want to know that, because I feel like we have a little nice community here, and you've sort of become these internet acquaintances, you know the word, for me, and I love reading your comments, and that's one of the things why I wanted to keep doing this, because I love reading your comments and your takes and your ideas and all that. So you guys are sort of the reason why I still want to keep going, and I'm the reason that I don't want to keep going. I do, but because it's just a lot to be me. No. But yeah, that's it for this episode. I hope this was worth listening. And I'll see you next week. But until then, keep your noses clean and your powder dry, as they say. Bye.